Yola Monica, this guy has a grow house in the middle of a neighborhood. Sounds like that wouldn't be allowed. Well, it's not. And it's not the only grow house this guy has. How are you, Jack?
Hey, Rob, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Too.
This is Jack Wolfe inviting me and my cameraman into his house, his marijuana house.
Yep, turned it into his own marijuana grow operation.
This is Jack Wolfe threatening me inside his marijuana house.
Have you ever been taken to a court of law? Have you ever had your deposition taken as a result of a story that you've done? Because you're about to have that happen to you.
Okay, great.
Good. Cameraman, too.
And while marijuana may be legal in Michigan now, I mean, you're a pro-marijuana guy.
Absolutely.
Even cannabis advocates are against what Jack Wolfe is doing.
I'm in support of marijuana, I'm in support of growing, but I'm also in support of keeping our residential neighborhoods residential.
I've got experience in the industry in Colorado. This isn't some kind of cowboy thing that I do.
Meet Otis Duncan.
I'm a legitimate pot farmer.
When Otis heard marijuana had been legalized in Michigan, he thought he'd get in on the boom.
I ran across an ad, I interviewed, and I became an employee.
His new boss, Jack B. Wolfe. Otis says Jack has 3 indoor grow houses.
My job was strictly to take care of the plants. I help cultivate the plants, grow the plants, and harvest the plants.
He says Jack Wolfe would pop in now and then, but Otis was in charge of the plants.
I even directly asked for these legal operations. The response I got was every one of them was a licensed cannabis plant under the medical marijuana law in Michigan.
Otis found out there is a problem.
The city of Troy building inspector shows up and lets me know that this is indeed and in fact an unlicensed grow operation.
Otis is a family man. He has no intentions of breaking any rules or laws. Otis claims he immediately quit and left town.
I felt like my family was in jeopardy as long as I was within arm's reach.
Jack Wolfe says otherwise.
Otis, I mentioned to you, got paid close to $40,000 by us. He was fired because he was incompetent.
Otis called me because he saw my first story about Jack, a story about deeds, not weed. In February, members of a Detroit family said someone was trying to take away homes they'd inherited from relatives. They say houses were transferred to companies using quitclaim deeds that had forged signatures. The company's registered agent was Jack B. Wolfe. Jack denied he forged the deeds or had anything to do with taking the houses.
So you're just a totally innocent party here?
I didn't say that.
Jack is a shady guy. Michigan Attorney Discipline Board records show he was once an attorney, was suspended, and never got his law license back. He was also the CEO of Loan Giant, a mortgage company that the United States Attorney's Office says was involved in phantom loans. A federal judge ordered Loan Giant to pay millions in fines, and Jack was ordered to pay $183,000 in restitution.
Did you pay it?
I don't believe so.
So why don't you pay it?
The fact of the matter, I don't have the money to do it.
So did Jack really go from deeds to weed? I went to find out. I was by myself, no cameraman, and I saw some guys standing outside a business next to Jack's place here in Troy. We started talking. Little did I know, Jack Wolfe was listening in.
Rob, by the way, we can hear everything you're saying. You know, our cameras do pick up voice, so we're hearing everything, you asshole.
By the time I got back to the station, Jack had left me 3 nasty messages.
And, you know, you caused me unnecessary embarrassment, and I intend to do the same to you.
Even though I never stepped foot on his property, apparently the grow house security system picked me up.
You're a hack, and you're a terrible hack. Why don't you just call me? Be a man.
So I did call Jack. He assured me everything he was doing at his marijuana grows was authorized. But look at this. In Troy, just like Otis said, the building inspector told Jack to shut the place down. On 4/5/2021, I observed the subject site and noticed the presence of an unlicensed medical marijuana grow operation. At the time, there are no licenses currently available for new growers. The business must vacate the premises. City administrators tell me Troy doesn't allow any commercial marijuana operations. They only license caregivers. Jack Wolfe never even bothered to apply. We have never received an application from Mr. Jack B. Wolfe. Otis also told me about this property in Iosco Township.
Weller Road Holdings. That's your company.
Correct.
And do you own that house? You have plants there too? That's what Otis said.
Well, that's good because Iosco Township told me they don't allow commercial marijuana operations either. That brings me to Jack's Grow House in Madison Heights. Talk about homegrown. This is a home in the middle of a nice family neighborhood. Corey Haynes is the chief of police.
We received an anonymous tip from a caller that there was a large grow operation for marijuana occurring at the house and in the garage. The caller also had stated that nobody was living at the house. It was simply being used as a grow operation.
The cops called the owner and were met at the house by Jack B. Wolfe.
The entire house had been converted basically into a greenhouse.
According to the police report, the house had been gutted, rewired, and even the kitchen was ripped out to make room for plants. The city ordered Jack to convert the place back into a home by late April. And on that deadline, I was there with my cameraman to watch the inspection. After a bunch of wrangling, I go inside. Jack tells me he's a licensed medical marijuana caregiver.
If you're a caregiver, you're only supposed to be servicing 5 or 6 people.
That's all I do. And there's
Well, what do you need all these plants for? What do you need all these places to grow for? Seems to me like you're running some kind of a marijuana growing operation, are you?
no.
Let's hope not, because even pro-marijuana people say it's important that marijuana growers follow the rules.
We're not going to collect the tax money that we were seeking. It won't all be lab tested as the regulated market is, and it just breeds disrespect for the law.
Jack says he's a medical marijuana caregiver, not a commercial grower. Here's the difference. The Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act of 2016 and the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act of 2018 allow the state's marijuana regulatory agency to license all these different types of commercial operations, from growers and transporters to sellers. And it's not cheap. One type of grower application alone could cost up to $40,000. Caregivers licenses, on the other hand, cost $40.
I can be a caregiver for up to 5 other people, period, end of story. So aside from my own 12 plants, I can grow only 60 plants for other people.
When I asked Jack for proof he's a licensed caregiver, he shows me this card.
It clearly was a patient card. It's blue and it has a P in the corner.
Matthew Abel says a caregiver card is a different color and has the names of the caregiver's 5 medical marijuana patients on it. Those patients have to be registered, and the caregiver can only give the pot to his 5 patients. He can charge them his cost, but can't sell it to a dispensary. He can't sell it to anyone. And Jack even admitted to me in a text he doesn't even use pot.
In Troy, you have 70-something plants too, right?
In Troy, I have 72 plants. Correct?
Yeah.
And 70 more in Madison Heights. It appears Jack has way more plants than a caregiver is allowed to have. The garage at this house is full of plants, and while the house is empty now, that wasn't the case when the cops showed up.
The main floor consisted of 46 marijuana plants. In the garage, 24 4 to 5 foot high marijuana plants. So you're lying to me because
No,
the police.
I'm not.
Well,
No,
this
I'm
is the
not.
police report. So the cop made that up.
The police report that with the 46, it just happened that I did a favor for someone and allowed them to veg in my house.
What does
I
that
gave
mean?
them a place to veg their plants. So I let them veg, and that was just so happened this is when it went down. So it looked like I had a lot more plants than I really normally have.
Doesn't matter.
This is your house, though, right?
This is a house that I do own.
And it's the house Otis says was full of plants that he was hired to take care of. Remember Otis the pot farmer? That's also a problem.
A caregiver is the only person who is allowed to access the garden, but I cannot accept any assistance. If you were to try to do something with a plant, I would have to say, hands off. You may not help me. You can't water these plants. You can't fertilize these plants. You cannot trim them.
Only the caregiver.
Only the caregiver.
And Otis the pot farmer was not the caregiver.
You're not supposed to have anybody working for you, I believe. I believe that you have to tend to all the plants. That's part of your job as a caregiver.
That's a fair statement.
But you said you hired Otis to be your plant guy, right?
To be my assistant. Whether or not that is consistent with the law, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't.
Now, Jack says recent court cases support his claim that he should be able to grow plants in the cities that want to throw him out. He says he's going to fight to keep his grow operations, but hasn't yet filed anything in court. He also claims his business deal in Troy included transferring a previous caregiver's permits, but city administrators say those permits are not transferable.
So what can Jack do with all this pot that he has?
Well, he can't sell it. He's not allowed to sell it to the dispensaries and all the legal places because they can only buy from commercial growers. So he can only give them to his 5 patients, and he has an awful lot of pot for 5 patients if indeed he's a caregiver, as he claims.